Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? Okay, so Moses Itama, he completely destroys Dillian White in the very first round. And here's a little fun fact just to refresh in your memory. When Tyson Fury knocked out Dillian White in the 6th round, people like Shakur Stevenson and old media, well, Shakur Stevenson in particular, he came out and he said right after that knockout win that Tyson Fury is so great that he would have beat Muhammad Ali. ESPN, they had Shakur Stevenson on camera. They were basically promoting Shakur's next fight, so they were in his house. And Shakur, he was watching that Tyson Fury fight, so he's reacting on camera, and he's like, oh my God, this guy is so great. He's this and he's that, right? And that's when he says, I don't care what nobody say, I'm gonna get some hate for this, but this man, he would have beat Muhammad Ali. And he says this all while he's wearing a Muhammad Ali shirt. True story. Matter of fact, ESPN, they like what Shakur said so much that they turned that clip into a separate video on their channel. Now, some people would have thought after all of that, Shakur Stevenson, he would have ended up becoming top rank and ESPN's favorite fighter, or one of their favorite fighters, right? But of course that didn't happen. In fact, it was quite the contrary. So I don't know if Shakur Stevenson said anything about Itama's performance knocking out Dillian White in the first round, but I'm sure he didn't compare Itama to Muhammad Ali. Dillian White, he came into this fight against Moses with 3 losses on his record, losses against all top-notch heavyweights. In fact, when Dillian White, when he lost to AJ was undefeated. Tyson Fury was undefeated, and then he lost to Povetkin. And he avenged that loss. After Dillian White lost to Tyson Fury, he racked up 3 wins in a row. He was 3-0 with 2 knockouts right before he fought against Moses Itama. What Moses just did to Dillian White, it was a massive statement. I mean, don't get me wrong, we all expected him to win this fight. He was the favorite to win the fight, but the fashion he did it in, it confirmed that he is the real deal in the heavyweight division and possibly the biggest threat to Alexander Usyk. Now listen, there are only 2 fighters right now in the heavyweight division that moves like a middleweight, has the foot movement and the body movement of a middleweight. That's Alexander Usyk and Moses Itama, and they're both southpaws. You know, guys, Alexander Usyk, he reminds me of Chuck Liddell, and I'm gonna break this down so you know what I'm talking about. If you go all the way back to when Chuck Liddell, he was completely dominating the UFC, right? They was already calling him the greatest MMA fighter of all time, right? He was beating everyone. And he had a secret weapon that the other MMA fighters did not have. You know what that was? That was stand-up. He had a great stand-up because at this time in the MMA, they didn't all have boxing trainers. They relied more on jiu-jitsu and wrestling, right? The guys that used to stand up and fight, they used to damn near fight like girls. They didn't know how to fight standing up. And Chuck, he was the only one. He had a background in kickboxing. So for Chuck Liddell, this was like taking candy from a baby. If you couldn't take down Chuck, you had no chance of beating him. And Chuck, he had a good takedown defense, which forced Chuck's opponents to try to beat Chuck at his own game, which was stand up. So in a way, Chuck, he wasn't really dealing with a whole lot of adversity. He was dominating the competition because these fighters, they were not on his level. They had no boxing ability, no stand-up game, until he ran into Quentin Rampage Jackson. And this was the first time that Chuck Liddell was in the ring with someone who had stand-up just as good as his was. In fact, even better. Because Chuck Liddell, he didn't have head movement. He stood up straight. Quentin Rampage, he had head movement. He bobbed and weaved like a Mike Tyson. And that's how Chuck Liddell got knocked out. That's how Rampage, he won the fight. And after Rampage won that fight, this is when all the UFC fighters, they went out and got themselves a boxing coach. So to me, Usyk, he's in Chuck Liddell's position, where once again, he's taking advantage of these slower heavyweights that don't really understand what Usyk is doing in the ring. They don't really understand the angles and the foot movement, but Moses does, because Moses, he does the exact same things. But there are distinctions. They're both southpaws, but they're different kind of southpaws. Usyk is more of a traditional southpaw where he relies mainly on the left hand. But Moses is a little bit more versatile. He throws great body shots, great right hook. He has the left hand. He has a tremendous jab. He fights on the front foot. He fights on the back foot. And I believe that he's faster than Usyk. I believe he has more speed and possibly more power. The advantage that Usyk would have over Moses would be his experience. But when it comes to tools, I believe that Moses, he has better tools than Usyk does. Now, this obviously doesn't guarantee he wins the fight because, like I said, Usyk does have experience. But at the same time, a fighter would most likely rather have better skills than just more experience. After all, Dillian White, he had more experience than Moses. You know, there were a lot of things that I was paying attention to in this fight, even though it didn't last that long. You know, going into this fight, I was expecting this fight to be over within the first 3 rounds. But in the first 30 seconds, Itama, he hit Dillian White with a perfect, quick, stiff jab. Beautiful stiff jab. And then he followed that up with a straight left to the body that kind of doubled over Dillian White. And after I seen that, I said, oh yeah, this is not going no more than 2 rounds. And then the way Itama Moses, the way he controls distance, the way he controls space in there. He's not like a lot of heavyweights that are a little bit sloppy where they throw a hard punch and then they fall in. You know, they're all leaning in, they're out of position. He's always in position to come back with another shot. He bounces in and out, which kind of reminds me of Bivol. But the difference is Moses, he just does that to open the door. Once he gets inside the house, that's when he takes you out. So Moses is definitely a problem. This doesn't mean that he's the only heavyweight in the heavyweight division that could possibly beat Usyk. But style-wise, from what we're seeing, we know that him in particular, he's going to give Usyk a lot of problems, and it's hard for me to believe that Usyk would even take this fight in the first place. Of course, this is the fight that Turki Al-Sheikh he wants to make. He's made it very clear. Even before he knocked out Dillian White, Turki, he said this is the dream match he wants to make at the heavyweight division. But I really can't see Usyk taking this fight. Now, I could be wrong, but I know for a fact, just because race fans in particular, they know how dangerous Moses is, they're going to be begging Usyk not to take a fight with Moses. They're going to really be urging him to retire right now after what they just seen this past weekend with Moses. But for Usyk to truly be great, these are the type of opponents that he needs to beat. Young, undefeated lions coming for the throne. And this is not to suggest that Usyk is not already great, but I'm talking about taking that legacy to a whole nother level. This is how you do it, by fighting fighters like this. Because Moses is not some flat-footed AJ or Dubois who's already been knocked out before. He's a guy that can do all of the same things that Usyk can do. And just like Usyk, Moses doesn't know how to lose yet. So if I know Turki, he will put a lot of pressure on Usyk to take the Moses fight. But Moses himself, he even kind of implied that he wasn't ready to fight against Usyk in his very next fight, which makes sense. I mean, I personally would like to see Moses fight against someone like a Joseph Parker or maybe a Martin Bakole, somebody in the top 5, the top 3, you know, because that would even sell the Usyk fight even more. In fact, now that I think about it a little bit more, I think Moses' next fight, it should be either against Joseph Parker or Agit Kabayel. Because we know that if Usyk continues to fight, he can't fight them both. So whichever opponent Usyk doesn't fight, then that's who Moses should fight. And listen, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this guy's name right, but Agit is a very tough fight for Usyk and Moses. So let's see how things play out. With that being said, I'm going to wrap this video up. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. Let me tell you guys about Issa Israel Law Firm. It is a full-service legal practice based in Denver, Colorado, an emerging hub for combat sports and high-altitude training. If you're a fighter inside or outside of the ring and you need a law firm you can trust to fight for you, visit thefighterfirm.com or email help@iilawfirm.com.
Legal representation is usually limited to plaintiffs or defendants in Colorado, but iFirm can help anyone in the world with trademarking their business name, logos, and U.S. immigration issues. This brother has been my attorney for a while and helped guide me through all kinds of business and civil issues, so make sure you guys go to thefighterfirm.com.
All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, fever blisters, diabetic ulcers, this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called LO Key Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to LODkey.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram.